Rain dripped steadily onto the cracked pavement, the neon glow of the streetlights flickering like tiny fireflies. A man stood in the corner, guitar slung over his shoulder, shoes worn to the soles, singing with everything he had. But almost no one was listening. His voice wasn't just good. It carried a raw, aching honesty, the kind of voice that makes you stop in your tracks and feel like the singer somehow knows every secret you've ever kept. But tonight, the world didn't seem to care. People rushed past him with umbrellas, heads down, lost in their own problems, barely sparing a glance. This was Daniel, 27 years old, with scruffy brown hair sticking to his forehead and eyes that had seen too many rainy nights like this one. He wasn't born for the streets, but life had a way of stripping away dreams until all that was left was survival. Daniel had once imagined bright stages, screaming crowds, and microphones that glimmered under spotlights. But right now, he was just another faceless musician on the city's wet sidewalks. And yet, when he sang, it felt like the whole world held its breath. He played one more song, a melody that seemed too big for such a small corner of the city, his fingers trembling from cold and fatigue. Coins clinked in the open case at his feet, but it wasn't nearly enough to cover dinner, let alone rent. He let out a tired laugh, bitter and quiet, and packed up his guitar. Maybe tonight was just another night to disappear into the rain, to walk home hungry and disappointed, hoping that tomorrow might be different. But that night, something extraordinary happened, something that could change the path of his entire life. As Daniel folded his worn coat around his shoulders, a shadow approached from the corner of his eye. It was a man in a tailored suit, holding an umbrella that seemed far too expensive for this side of town. He stopped, and for a moment, Daniel felt that uneasy stillness that comes when someone watches you more carefully than anyone else has in years. There was something about the man's presence, a quiet intensity, that made Daniel's pulse quicken. Then the man spoke, his voice calm, almost casual. "You have a gift," he said, looking straight into Daniel's eyes, the rain bouncing off the brim of his hat. Daniel blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. People usually ignored him, avoided him, but this man, he seemed different. The man held out a card. Just a simple card, nothing flashy. But Daniel didn't know it yet, not fully, that this small gesture was about to ignite a chain of events he could never have imagined, a chain that might lift him out of obscurity or break him entirely. And as Daniel reached out to take it, a shiver ran down his spine. Something about this moment felt like a turning point, a door opening into a world he wasn't ready for, but couldn't turn away from. He looked at the card, and in that instant, the rain felt colder, the city louder, and the night more alive than it had ever been. Daniel sat on the curb, the card trembling in his fingers. He didn't know what to make of it. The words were simple. "Call me. I want to hear more." No name, just a phone number. And yet, the way the man had looked at him, like he'd seen something in Daniel that no one else ever had, stayed burned in his mind. He stuffed the card into his coat pocket and stood, letting the rain soak through his thin layers. Something told him that this night was the beginning of something bigger, but the truth was, Daniel had learned to be cautious. Dreams didn't usually survive in his world. He walked home, past the shuttered stores and glowing street lamps, thinking of how different things could have been. Daniel wasn't always a street musician. He had grown up in a small apartment with his mother and younger sister, a family bound by love but stretched thin by bills and misfortune. His mother worked double shifts cleaning offices. His sister skipped classes to babysit him when he was too young to be left alone. Music had been the only escape, the only thing that made life feel like it had color. Daniel's father had left when he was 10, leaving behind only a broken guitar and a few faded photographs. That guitar had become Daniel's treasure, the thing he clung to even when the world felt like it was closing in. He practiced late into the night, imagining audiences and lights, the applause he never actually received. Somewhere between the exhaustion and the hunger, music became his language, the way he told his story without words. And yet, as much as Daniel loved music, life had a way of punishing passion. He had tried gigs at small bars and cafes, hoping someone, anyone, would notice. Some nights were good. A few faces lit up in the crowd, smiles spreading for just a moment. But the bills never went away, and the rejections piled up, each one heavier than the last. By the time he ended up on the streets, singing for coins and passing glances, he had learned a quiet kind of resilience. The world wasn't waiting to hand him his dreams, and sometimes it felt like it would rather see him fail. Still, the card in his pocket felt different. It wasn't like any opportunity he had been offered before. There was a weight to it, a promise of something he had only imagined in the dark corners of his mind. And even as he told himself to stay cautious, his heart couldn't stop racing. What if this was the break he had been waiting for? The thought made his stomach twist with excitement and fear. Daniel reached the small apartment he shared with his sister, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The familiar smell of old wood and frying onions filled the air. His sister, Emily, was sprawled on the couch, sketching in her notebook. She looked up and raised an eyebrow. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Or maybe someone finally gave you money for your singing," she teased. Daniel forced a laugh, holding the card tight in his hand. "Something like that," he said, but he didn't explain. How could he? Not even he knew the full story yet. As he lay awake that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, the city noises humming outside, Daniel's mind wouldn't stop replaying the man's words. A gift? For him? And why had the man chosen him? Something big was coming. He could feel it, but whether it would lift him up or crush him completely, he didn't know. The next morning, Daniel stared at the card again, turning it over in his hands like it was a fragile treasure. He had never been the type to take risks, especially not with strangers who promised the world, but something inside him refused to let this moment pass. With a deep breath, he dialed the number. A smooth voice answered, calm but commanding. "Daniel? This is Marcus Lane. I saw you last night." Daniel's pulse quickened. The man's name made him sound official, important, like someone who didn't waste time on ordinary things. Marcus went on, "I think you have real talent. I want to meet you and hear more of your songs. Can you come by my studio tomorrow?" Daniel's stomach twisted. The excitement was almost unbearable, but doubt crept in, slow and insidious. Who was he kidding? A record producer showing interest in a street singer like him. It sounded like a dream, and dreams had a way of shattering. What if this was a scam? What if he showed up and nothing happened, and he walked away humiliated? He told Emily about the call, trying to mask the nervousness in his voice. She frowned, folding her sketchbook. "You have to be careful, Daniel. This could be a chance, sure, but it could also be trouble. People like that don't usually care about your life. They just want something from you." Her words gnawed at him, but the fire in his chest wouldn't die. He knew he had spent too long waiting, hiding behind safety and excuses. He couldn't let fear steal this moment, not if there was even the tiniest chance that his life could change. That night, he barely slept. Every scenario ran through his mind. The studio lights, the polished instruments, strangers judging him, applauding, or ignoring him. He kept imagining Marcus, tall and sharp-suited, listening to his voice with that unnerving intensity from last night. What did he really see in him? The next day, Daniel found himself standing in front of a tall building downtown. Glass windows reflected the bright sun, the city buzzing around him. He clutched his guitar case, each step heavier than the last. What if he wasn't good enough? What if this man's interest was just a fleeting curiosity, a polite dismissal waiting to happen? He reached the studio door, heart pounding like a drum. With a hand that trembled slightly, he knocked. The door swung open, and Marcus stood there, smiling. But there was something in his eyes Daniel couldn't read, a sharpness, a hint of expectation. Daniel stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind him. And in that moment, he realized that whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back now. The studio smelled of polished wood, leather, and something faintly metallic, like the sharp edge of ambition. Daniel's hands were sweaty, gripping his guitar case as Marcus led him down a long corridor lined with gold records and black and white photos of artists who seemed impossibly perfect. Each step echoed, making Daniel feel like he was walking toward judgment. Marcus stopped in front of a door and turned to him. "You'll play in there," he said, nodding toward the recording room. "I want to hear everything. No pressure, but really, give me your best." His smile was warm, but Daniel caught a flicker in his eyes, a look that suggested this wasn't just about music. It was about potential, yes, but also about control. Daniel set up in the recording room, the walls lined with microphones, soundboards, and monitors that blinked like silent witnesses. He tuned his guitar with trembling fingers, taking deep breaths. He tried to steady himself, telling himself this was what he had always wanted, a chance to be heard. But with every note, every chord, the pressure grew heavier. He could feel Marcus watching him through the glass, every movement scrutinized, every pause noticed. He started to play a song he had written months ago, a melody that carried all the nights of hunger, all the loneliness, all the small victories no one ever saw. His voice was raw, full of emotion, but the silence on the other side of the glass made him second-guess himself. Did it sound weak? Did it sound desperate? Then Marcus spoke, his voice low and smooth over the intercom. "Don't hold back, Daniel. Sing like your life depends on it." Those words lit a fire under him, but also stoked the fear. Sing like your life depends on it. Did he know how much it already had? Did he see how fragile Daniel's world had been all along? Daniel closed his eyes and let the music take over, letting every note carry the weight of years spent ignored, every lyric a confession of dreams deferred. For a moment, it felt like time stopped. Daniel could hear himself, feel himself, and for the first time, he almost believed. Almost. Then came the silence. The music faded, and Daniel opened his eyes. Marcus wasn't smiling anymore. He was leaning against the wall, fingers tapping lightly on the glass, his face unreadable. Daniel's chest tightened. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it enough? Marcus finally spoke, walking into the room slowly. "Impressive," he said, flat but deliberate. "But talent alone won't carry you. There are other things you'll need to understand." His gaze lingered on Daniel in a way that sent shivers down his spine. Things most artists never survive. Daniel's stomach sank. He wanted to ask what he meant, but the words caught in his throat. Something about Marcus's tone made it clear. This opportunity wasn't just going to test his music. It was going to test everything he thought he knew about life, ambition, and himself. As Marcus turned away, leaving Daniel to stare at his own reflection in the glass, a faint unease settled over him. He had walked into the chance of a lifetime, but the shadow behind that chance was far darker than he could have imagined. And just as Daniel took a shaky breath, the door behind him clicked, slowly, deliberately, signaling that whatever came next, he had no choice but to face it. Daniel barely had time to catch his breath when the door to the recording room opened again. This time, it wasn't Marcus who stepped in. It was a young woman, sharp-eyed and cold, holding a stack of contracts and staring at him like she had been waiting for this exact moment. "Daniel," she said, her voice clipped, "before you get too comfortable, you need to know the truth. Signing with us isn't just about music. It's about loyalty and sacrifice." Daniel froze. "Sacrifice?" She nodded, flipping the top contract toward him. "Every artist who comes through here is tested. Some pass, some don't." A chill ran down his spine. The warm, encouraging glow of opportunity he had felt just hours ago now felt like a trap closing around him. Marcus's words echoed in his mind. Things most artists never survive. Daniel looked from the contract to the woman, then back at Marcus, who stood silently in the corner, a small, unreadable smile on his face. Suddenly, the dream he had chased his entire life felt perilously close, but so much more dangerous than he could have imagined. And in that instant, Daniel realized, this was no ordinary chance. It was a test of everything he was, and not everyone made it out alive. Daniel stared at the contract like it was a ticking bomb. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as Marcus and the woman watched him. Every instinct screamed to run, to grab his guitar and disappear into the night. But something stronger pulled him forward. The music inside him, the years of hunger and longing that had built up to this moment. He took a deep breath, set his guitar on his lap, and started to play. This time, he didn't think about the notes, the sound, or even the audience on the other side of the glass. He poured everything he had into the song. The nights he had slept hungry, the moments he had been ignored, the dreams he had buried in the dark. Every chord, every lyric was raw and real. The silence that followed his last note was unbearable. Marcus leaned forward, expression unreadable, as the woman studied him intently. Then, slowly, Marcus smiled. "You understand now," he said. "This isn't about talent alone. It's about who survives the pressure, who is willing to fight for every inch of their dream." Daniel felt a wave of relief, a glimmer of hope, but it was fleeting. The woman stepped forward, sliding the contract toward him again. "Sign it," she said softly, "or walk away forever." There is no middle ground. Daniel hesitated. The weight of his decision pressed down like a physical force. His life had been defined by risk, by small chances that never went anywhere. Could he take this leap, knowing it could change everything or destroy him? He picked up the pen, hands shaking. And just as he pressed it to the paper, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and paled. His composed demeanor cracked for the first time. Daniel froze. "What is it?" he asked. Marcus looked at him, eyes wide. It seems there's someone else. Another singer. Someone exactly like you." Daniel's stomach dropped. The path to his dream had been open, but now it was a race. Not just to succeed, but to survive the cutthroat world he had finally stepped into. And in that moment, he realized nothing about this opportunity was safe. Not his voice, not his heart, not even the dream he had chased his whole life. The room held its breath. Daniel's next move would decide everything: success, survival, and whether his life would ever be the same. Daniel set the pen down without signing. The silence in the room was thick, almost suffocating. Marcus and the woman exchanged a glance, a mixture of surprise and something else: respect, perhaps, or disbelief. I can't," Daniel said, voice trembling but firm. "I won't sign a life I don't fully understand. I came here to share my music, not to compete in some game I wasn't ready for." Marcus stepped closer, studying him intently. "Most people would have signed without hesitation," he said quietly. "Why not you?" Daniel took a deep breath, looking down at his guitar resting against the wall. "Because music isn't just about survival. It's about truth. It's about the people who hear it and feel it. I don't want my songs to be trophies in someone else's collection. I want them to matter, to me, and to the world I know, not just some shadowed stage where the cost is too high." For a long moment, the room was still. Then Marcus nodded, slowly, a small smile breaking through his usual calm. "You're rare," he said. "Maybe that's why I noticed you in the first place. Most give in to the temptation without a thought." The woman collected the contract and stepped back, a faint smirk on her face. "You've made a bold choice," she said. "But bold choices have consequences." Daniel felt a mixture of relief and fear. He had walked into a world full of opportunity, but he had also walked away from the version of success most people would kill for. And yet, as he picked up his guitar, the weight in his chest lifted. For the first time in years, he felt free. Marcus gestured toward the door. "Keep playing, Daniel. Keep singing where it matters. Maybe one day, you'll find a way to do both, share your music and survive in the world of opportunity. Until then, remember this: talent alone isn't enough. Integrity, courage, that's what separates those who last from those who disappear." Daniel stepped out into the sunlight, rain-slick streets reflecting the morning light. Emily was waiting nearby, sketchbook in hand, a small grin on her face. "So," she asked. "I didn't sign," Daniel admitted, strapping the guitar over his shoulder. "But I'm not giving up. Not now. Not ever." Emily laughed, tugging his sleeve. "That's my brother." Daniel smiled, walking to the corner where he had sung countless nights before. He strummed the first chord, and people began to pause, drawn to the raw honesty in his voice. Coins clinked in his open case. Yes, but it was more than that. It was attention, connection, a small but genuine recognition. And for Daniel, that was enough. He had learned that dreams weren't about instant success or fame. They were about persistence, about finding the courage to stand tall, even when the world seemed stacked against you. As the city moved around him, Daniel sang with everything he had, knowing that no card, no contract, and no shadowy opportunity could ever take away what made his music real, him. And somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "That voice, it's incredible." Daniel smiled. Maybe this was the beginning of something bigger, but this time, it would be on his terms.